Thank you, Amy. Take it down now, please. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Three Nations Dementia Working Group webinar. We're all happy to be with you this morning, and this morning's themes is New Beginnings. New beginnings are times of opportunity, full of endless potential and hope. They offer the chance for something greater, beyond what we can imagine or envisage for ourselves. Every day presents a new beginning, so treat it as such. Avoid dwelling on what could have been and focus instead on what can be. Although new beginnings can be challenging, they're exciting and allow us to build upon previous achievements. As always, we have a panel to assist us with this webinar, and they will introduce themselves shortly. Please note the following about these webinars. We rely on your participation, which includes your comments, responses, and questions. You can submit your queries using the text boxes at the bottom of your screen. It is essential that you use these text boxes instead of raising your hand, because if you do, we won't be able to see you. We will monitor the text boxes and for any questions, so we can address them as we proceed later. It's essential to keep in mind these webinars are created, produced, and presented by individuals living with dementia. While we cannot handle individual queries, we will try to provide guidance through the text boxes on where you can get help. Well, that's all from me, and it's now time for me to hand over to our first panelist, who is Joy. Good morning, Joy.
Morning.
And how are you this morning? You well?
Really good, thank you.
Good, good. Fire away, Joy. Off you go.
Well, it seems quite exciting to be on the panel. And I've written down a few things that I just wanted to pass on. New beginnings can mean different things, as Nigel was already adhered to. For some, it can be exciting, looking forward to new adventures and trying new activities. For others, it can be a scary time, uncertain of what the future may hold. We at Three Nations fall into both categories, and this changes by the day, even by the hour. Each one of us wants to be as positive as we can and run with the plans that are presented. I guess our mantra is, together we can. As a group of people living with dementia, we are able to understand each other's needs and respond to each other with empathy. I, for one, am looking forward to the new beginnings that are on the horizon. We have accomplished so much over the past months, the webinars being a good example, along with other projects. Who says people with dementia can't do very much? We all know that people can struggle, but this support we give each other is very special and gives us a sense of purpose. Sadly, you can't always know what it's like living with this condition until you experience it for yourself. So I'll let someone else outline our goals and hopes for Three Nations New Beginnings. All I would say is count me in. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. I'm not going to let you go because I want you to briefly talk people through, give people information on the Traveling in My Shoes project, which you were an integral part of. We forget in the Three Nations that we can have a real impact. And when it came to the proposed closures of the ticket offices, I remember you becoming quite incensed and wanted action done, and we followed that. Can you just briefly tell the audience, in your own words, what happened?
Yeah, as you say, I was quite annoyed, but at the same time wanting to play my part in the closure of said closures of the offices. So with Three Nations help, we managed to have a conversation with some of the managers of the railway service, and that concluded with me doing some travelling with one of the managers, and he was just gobsmacked as to some of the difficulties people with disabilities face. So it just ran and ran, and we've got lots of improvements and lots of staff being helpful in organising the transport and the what's it called when you have help?
Assisted travel.
Assisted travel, yeah, that's it. And yeah, I thought the closing of the offices, we've got a good result on that. And I think because we all pulled together and we all knew that the closing of the offices would be a negative thing for lots of people, not just those with dementia, but we've
Yeah.
managed to turn that around, which is very encouraging.
Yeah, and to build on that, we're going forward now, and we're looking overall at the assistance program available throughout the rail network, because they get, you know, assisted travel is so vital for people living with a diagnosis to get from A to B, particularly if you're traveling through built-up areas, isn't it? You know, it's extremely difficult. Joy, when that happened, did you feel, wow, people are listening to me? When you travelled with the manager, did you feel he was really listening to you?
Yes, I did. I was quite surprised at that. I don't know why I was surprised. I just, having had experience in the past of people just sidestepping what we had to say. Yes, he was very enthusiastic and he took notes, and he said that in his capacity he would be able to change some of the things that I'd highlighted. So that was a amazing encouragement for all of us. But yes, he was very up to learning new things, seeing what things could be improved. And, you know, I flagged up a lot of the positives, which he took on board as well.
Yeah. So in many ways, it was a new beginnings for him, because he'd met somebody who wanted to make changes to their lives. And that has a knock-on effect, because I understand you went back to Manchester and did some dementia awareness training, did you not?
Exactly, yeah. He promoted some of the disability lounges, and we filmed Manchester Piccadilly station, and now we've got 2 more major stations that he wants us to help become disability friendly. So the outcome was amazing, and it's an ongoing project now.
Yeah, yeah. We have a relationship with the rail companies, which could only happen with the voices of dementia, really. I mean, that's why they couldn't sort of turn you away. Thank you, Joy, and I mean, and thank you for the work that you're doing with the rail companies. You and with one other person. Thank you so much for what you're doing and taking us forward and dealing with a very difficult problem, because a lot of people, when the announcement was made, thought it couldn't be changed. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Everything could be changed. New beginnings are about change, and that's what we did.
It can only be changed when the people at the top realise the things we struggle with.
Yeah.
And he saw the things I struggled with, the practical things, and he's running with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for taking the time out to do it. Good morning, Mark. Our next contributor is Mark. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me here. You know, new beginning. When you say the word new beginning, it means a new start. It means starting a school, starting a job. Anything that you do is new, and in a sense, it's resurrection. It's rebirth. It's combination of things. And in my opinion, you know, the thing that really happens is that when you have a new beginning, that means that you are reflecting on your past, you're making changes to your life, you're accepting the situation that you're in at the moment and adapting to it, and having a goal to actually reach. And in all that, you need help. At school, teachers are there. At home, parents are there. But when you've got a diagnosis of an illness, you need some professional help. And this is crucial. And in my opinion, what I have found is that for people with dementia, the best help that they can get is peer support. And that has been the key to my recovery as well. And by peer support, I mean the organizations like Three Nations Dementia Working Group, DEEP, and I think they are the ones that actually picked me up from down there up to here. And hence, I'm sitting here talking to you today. I'd lost my confidence, and all that has been brought back up again by meeting people that are in the same boat, in the same situation. And I feel that people living with dementia connect better with people living with dementia. I'd also like to say that I was diagnosed in 2010, and up till 2019, I didn't even know that Alzheimer's Society existed because I wasn't signposted to them. And I have volunteered for Alzheimer's Society. And from the experience that I have found that talking to people with dementia by people living with the diagnosis of dementia does more work than anything else. And it's more beneficial. I used to volunteer and I used to make calls to people. And, every week they were waiting for my call. And when an 85-year-old lady on the other end of the line says, your phone bill must be massive. Can I call you next time? Can you put a price on that? So what it means, what I'm trying to say is that frequent contact, and actually, because it's a progressive condition, this, and it changes from day to day, week to week, hour to hour. And the more frequent contact that you have, the better it is. We at Three Nations have weekly meetings. We have Sunday gatherings, social meetings, and that really starts me up for the week when we have the weekend gatherings, and it sort of boosts me up, and I look forward to the rest of the week. Prior to our diagnosis, I used to have good quality of life. Well, ever since I've become part of this team, I have got quality of good life, and I'm living to the utmost, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. Thanks again, Three Nations Dementia Working Group. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I've got to say that you've been a strong supporter of what we do on a Saturday and a Sunday, which is just people getting together and being friends. And I mean, the peer support. I think the peer support bit of living with dementia is kind of underused. I think it's such an important issue sometimes that people find it difficult in A, getting access to it, and B, being part of it. Mark, if this peer support wasn't around, can you imagine how you'd manage?
I would have been at a loss end, simply because being from a South Asian background, there is no word for dementia in the languages, and people don't understand it. And I was lucky in the sense that I was educated, I was computer literate, and I could do the research myself, which I did. And I always say that I have diagnosis of dementia. I have dementia, but dementia doesn't have me. And I am more active now than I ever was. Oh, yes, it would be. I don't know what the life would be like, because you're handed some leaflets and you're hammered with this diagnosis, and you just bin the leaflets. You're in no state to actually read the leaflets. So face-to-face sort of contact and explanation of it. I mean, I was scared when I was told I got dementia, because I have limited knowledge of it, and the knowledge that I had was the last end of it, and I didn't want to be there. You know, and first I refused to believe it, because you know, I didn't want like dementia to take over, and I did what I could, and I joined the PS4 groups locally, and through social media, I made loads of friends, and I sort of, in a way, I say thank you, dementia. I have gained friends, the proper friends, the friends for life, like the likes here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the best support is peer support. Unfortunately, the access to that sometimes is difficult, problematic. It's finding groups, it's finding the right type of group to fit you, because not every group fits you. But from my point of view, for next year, for the coming year, I think I will be supporting more peer support groups than I do at the moment. I just support the two, but I will be looking forward to bringing more people on board too, because if you don't get your voice here, it's so frustrating, isn't it? I mean, and sometimes you don't get the answers, but you get the opportunity to unload. I noticed that's the main. There's no subject matter to our meetings. They just take a flow, don't they? And we talk about everything and everything.
I feel that you know, this lockdown was a blessing in disguise in a way, because it highlighted Zoom, and through Zoom we've been talking to people, but you know, you can't beat face to face. I think that we must, or we should, at least twice a year have a face-to-face gathering, because you could put a face to a name, and you touch people, you smell people, you talk to people, you relate to them, and that is what keeps you going, I think. And that's needed.
I mean, but you know, what I like about Zoom is that you can travel these huge distances without leaving your living room. I mean, it goes days that I never put my trousers on because I don't have to. And that's an added advantage, you know, that you could sit comfortably in your own home and get on with it. Mark, thank you very much. I'll be coming back to you on a couple of issues, but thank you so much for your contribution. And our next interview is a very posh lady called Cheryl Elliott. I mean, she's got a posh title, and I forgot what it is. There you go. What a good chairman I am. So Cheryl works for the Alzheimer's Society in a specific role. Perhaps you can introduce yourself and your role. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning, Nigel, and good morning, everybody else. Posh isn't the word I'd use, Nigel, but my title is Senior Involvement Partner. I'd like to just go back a little bit to what Joy was saying when she said, together we will. Because thinking about new beginnings draws me into the not only together we will, but together we did, as in a bit of reflection about some of the things that we achieved together over the last 12, 18 months, some of those key moments where we've worked and collaborated together and achieved an awful lot that's led us to this position now, where at the end of my bit, I'm going to share with you some of those new ways that we're going to communicate about opportunities, but it's important to sort of look back. So if I think about the sort of last sort of 12 months, we, at this time last year, started to perhaps talk a bit differently about involvement. For instance, we're called the involvement team now, no longer Dementia Voice, but involvement team. And people who get involved are our Dementia Voice partners. But also we started to be really clear about the different ways in which people get involved, because there are lots of different ways that you and others are involved and bring your lived experience into our thinking and working. Then the other key kind of moment for me in the year was the co-production of our first ever involvement retreat, which many of the Three Nations and other people living with and affected by dementia were part of co-producing and creating that real fantastic opportunity where we spent a whole 3 days together looking at what it means to bring people with lived and learnt experience together to work in partnership. and how we set clearer expectations of one another, how we communicate about those opportunities, and how we think about what can we do together to reach out and involve different voices, different experiences. So huge achievement coming together that's led to shaping some of the work that we've continued working on. When you think about that momentum and energy from that 3 days, we've seen that visibly in our annual conference in May last year, but also in things like the Dementia Hero Awards, and even our first ever month of involvement, where together with people like yourselves, we are sharing through a range of webinars, podcasts, other bits of communication, people's voices, and creating those platforms for people to share the range of experiences. So whole load of activity that I think is, for some, feels very visible, they connect with. But it's also important, I suppose, to reflect on the fact that not everything is obvious to everybody. Sometimes that work behind the scenes that we all do together isn't obvious until you start to talk about new beginnings. So some of the other key things that have happened for us that have perhaps changed how we are going to be communicating about involvement is we've had the excitement of our colleagues in research engagement coming into our team, so they're part of our involvement family now. We also are, I suppose today, sharing with you a couple of new key ways in which we're going to be communicating about involvement opportunities to a broad range of people, professionals and people living with and affected by dementia. But another key thing is that we've kind of done that bit of thinking about how do we learn more about the impact of involvement? How do we realise the difference that lived experience is making, and also prioritise the support that we, as a very small team in the scheme of things, are offering to some of our colleagues. And one of the things that we have done is to start to ask our internal colleagues. There are many different teams and different groups of people that some of you will have been working with now and in the past. We will have asked them to indicate, how do you intend to involve people? What's your goal here? And to do that bit of prioritising and supporting teams better. And I think what that's shown to us is that we've, over the course of just a few months, had well in excess of 100 requests just from internal colleagues. So I think some of that stuff that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see is really important to reflect on when you are thinking about, well, what does new beginnings mean to me? And new beginnings, the bit that I really wanted to share from our perspective today, is that we've listened to and heard from the lived experience community, Three Nations members and others, about people's desire to want to hear more about, well, what are the ways in which I can get involved? What might different teams in the organisation be doing? Particularly if you're somebody that doesn't maybe link into webinars or isn't already involved. So the way we've approached that is to say that we're going to launch a new involvement update, which my colleague will put a link to how to sign up to that in the chat. And what that will do is another example of how we're working together, how we are regularly communicating about what might some of those opportunities to be involved look like, not just from the Alzheimer's Society, but from other partners. And alongside that, giving people a sense of what things might various teams be working on. So communicating a bit more openly and putting those opportunities out there for people to consider and hopefully step forward. Hopefully people that perhaps haven't been involved yet or want to make that first step into involvement. And what you'll find in that update is we're also promoting, to complement what you're already offering in terms of your monthly webinars, is a bi-monthly or every other month webinar, which one of my colleagues really aptly described as a kind of talking update or a talking newsletter, a way of how we bring in some of those examples of involvement in practice and bring staff and people who are involved in our work into those webinars to sort of talk through, as you do really well as a group, kind of what does that look like? What's the impact of that involvement been? So that it becomes a very much a reality for other people, and hopefully encourages other people to sort of step forward and consider involvement. And to start with, we're focusing on people who are living with dementia and those who are affected by dementia for those webinars, and they will be delivered with those people that are involved. And at a later point, we'll be looking at how we involve professionals and others. But for now, we will be, once they're delivered, sharing those links to those recordings more widely afterwards.
Thank you, Cheryl. Anybody can manage anything that doesn't move forward. It's easy. You do the same things every day. The challenge of managing change is huge, because you're kind of asking people to think in a new way and a different way. And it slows the process of change down, because you have to backstep, make sure that you're getting the right people in the right place, and that the aims are quite clear to everybody. What's the end game here? Is it to increase the number of people in involvement, or is it to streamline the way that involvement takes place, ensuring that everybody has an equal opportunity to get a voice? Or is it all of those things?
Thanks, Nigel. I think it is about opening up that awareness of ways in which people can get involved, so that those that may not be seeing those opportunities currently can consider them. I think it's also a good way of people getting a sense of what that might look like, because it's quite sometimes a difficult thing to explain, given that there is a range of ways in which people can be involved, from being involved in research, campaigning, shaping services. And sometimes that can feel quite daunting to somebody that's never taken that step and been involved in a particular piece of work. So the other side of it is just giving people that introduction to what that looks like. That's exactly what you're doing with these webinars. You're sharing your experiences of being involved, the difference that makes, and hopefully encouraging other people to consider that might be something they want to get involved in later. So it's kind of both. It's about broadening up that, or opening up the door, as it were, so other people can see those opportunities. It's about communicating better about what that is, what the impact of it's been. And hopefully giving people a bit of time to think about it before taking that step. And obviously the way we'll help people to take that step will be to hopefully communicate far more clearly about what might a particular upcoming opportunity be like, and give people a way to sort of connect back in and say, I'm interested in that, consider me for this opportunity.
Yeah. And I think that, hats off. I mean, and like I say, you didn't have to change it. I think you did, but if you didn't, then there wouldn't have been a great deal of outcry. But I mean, you decided to go a different way, and yeah, hats off to you. And I think you'll all say that we'll support it as far as we can, and we'll support it as much as we can, because if we don't, it means that the opportunities for people to have their voice here to get are limited, and that's probably been a problem over the last couple of years, I guess, that it's not been an open book, an open field, if you like, that other people have set the parameters, and now we have the opportunity to set it ourselves, and I think it's an opportunity we can't miss. Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quickie for Cheryl. We've talked about this, people living with dementia connect better with people living with dementia. We've established that, and we proved that through our Zoom sessions and whatever. So how is that going to be accommodated? And also, the perception that people living with dementia are incapable or incompetent, how is that being tackled by the society itself?
Thanks, Mac. Two questions there. One about, I suppose, involvement in what the service offer might be from the Alzheimer's Society, And I come back to that kind of way in which we want to communicate about those opportunities in advance to people, to not only be clear about when that's happening and how people might be involved, but to open that up to different people, not just perhaps those that currently are receiving services. For instance, there might be people out there that aren't aware of what we offer. So opening that door really to people to be involved through a range of ways. And an example of how we might do that in the future might be through those webinars that we'll be running each month, is to bring forward those voices who have been involved in pieces of work like that. The other bit around your other question, which was around that perception of people who are involved, I think the fact that we do and want to work with organisations like the Three Nations is about how together we tackle that kind of stigma or perception of people. And we're doing it through things like today, where you are leading on that co-creation, co-delivery of the topics that are important to you.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. We look forward to hearing more about it. We look forward to helping you with your next webinar. You know, the ones that you're producing. You know where to come. We're there, and I'll say now that all of us support what you're trying to do. All of us. We'll take forward almost everything that you say, because it's, you know, change is always difficult, but sometimes it's necessary. My next speaker is Keith Oliver. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Nigel, and thank you. And good morning, everyone who's on the call today. It's lovely to be able to join you all. And I've noticed on the list of participants a number of very familiar names, and also some names which are less familiar to me. And that links in a way to what Mac was saying earlier about the importance of peer support. So there are many peers of Mac, Joy, and myself on this webinar today, which is great to see. So just to begin my part of the webinar then, by first of all expressing to you that maybe shops selling 2024 calendars for less than half price suggest that the new year is advanced, but really it's just beginning. And when thinking of new beginnings, I often think of the Roman god Janus, who gave us the name of the month to begin the year, and whose two heads faced both forwards and backwards into the new year and from the old. This is because to consider looking forward to a new beginning, I feel one is very influenced by what's gone before. And with this in mind, I'll explore some more thoughts, which I hope will stimulate your thinking, and we can return to maybe at the end of the webinar. As I look out of my lounge window before the webinar today, or don a coat and venture into our garden, my eyes fall upon snowdrops, crocuses, and daffodils, all of which are beginning to herald spring by bursting into colourful bloom. Whilst this is a new beginning, it isn't really, as the bulbs have been awakened below the surface for some time and did flower profusely last year before taking a well-earned rest below the surface. My talk, as always, is full of metaphors. I'll leave you to take from it what you will. As an Alzheimer's Society ambassador for the past 8 years, and closely linked with the Society since soon after my diagnosis with Alzheimer's on New Year's Eve 2010, I was then fortunate to become a founder member of the Three Nations with Hilary Doxford and Chris Roberts. So it's close to my heart and close to my mind, and we all want it to succeed in its old relationship, but also its new relationships that we have. Moving next further into the Three Nations and the webinars, which certainly between May 2020 and July 2023 emerged, drew people's attention whilst in bud, before bursting into flower and enriching those who saw them by their shape, colour, and variety. Now, after a winter break, we are seeking ways of how best a new beginning for the webinars, can add to the rich discourse around dementia. We know they are popular. We know the webinars are needed. We know they are unique. And we hope that by looking back, we can retain the best of before, whilst adding new beginnings to make them even better, and to align them more closely to the strategic plan of the Alzheimer's Society, without losing sight of our independent voice, which enables us the unique and crucial responsibility of placing people with dementia at the centre by identifying and providing what is often a new beginning in building knowledge on subjects which are of interest, relevance, and importance to service users and service providers alike. New beginnings bring to my mind the experience of myself and many others I have heard talk about a diagnosis of dementia, marking a new beginning. In the context of my talk so far, this continuum is based upon the fact that a diagnosis is often life-changing, but certainly need not be life-ending. As I said to my wife the day I was initially diagnosed in May 2010, one door will close, but one door will open. New beginnings I knew lay ahead, though I had no idea what they would be. To enable any of the new beginnings, including this one, to be successful requires nurturing, support, and encouragement, all of which my friends on this webinar have touched on today. With this, the new beginning will grow into something positive. Without it, the bulbs wither and die, the webinars wither and die, and the person with dementia will meet the same sad fate. Finally, from me, before I hand back the baton to Nigel, thank you to everyone who's joined us today, both on the panel and in the audience. What is clear is that together there can be many more new beginnings, and which, if we stay together and support each other with respect, transparent, honest communication, time, truth, and compassion, we can all certainly look forward rather than look back in order to bring benefits and new beginnings to us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And I do agree wholly with everything that you say. That there's no doubt about it. Every day is a new beginning for me because every day something changes. So you know we're used to that, but we do need help. Shannon McCaffrey says, Keith, that you might like to look up the Janus Stone in Devonish Island, County Fermanagh, if ever you're passing by.
There you go.
Yes,
I didn't know of that. I didn't know.
It's something you can look at.
Yes, it's quite a powerful image, that Roman god, actually, because as I said, it, you know, they did look forward and they did look back, and it's aptly given the name to the month of January, because that's of course what you do.
Yeah. I think Cheryl put that in perspective with her little bit where she said, as well as looking forward, we should be looking back on the things that we've been successful with. Now we've got a couple of questions, and it starts off with a question for Joy, really. But of course, this applies to all of us. But let me get to the question. And it's from Steve Kennedy, Joy. And it says, congratulations, Joy, on your wonderful success in making the railways listen to what you have to say. May I ask, what were the most difficult parts of your journey as a person living with dementia? What did you find most difficult about rail travel?
Well, I think a lot of it was practical, just pointing out what things frightened me like issues with assisted travel where the teams weren't necessarily trained enough to realise what was frightening me. Lots of practical things like that.
Yeah, I can recall. I was travelling to North Wales, and the train splits in half in Crewe, but nobody told me.
Mhm.
And I was sat in an empty train for about an hour and a half, wondering why. I thought he'd broken down. Keith.
Sorry, Nigel, don't interrupt what you're saying. You want to finish
No.
what you're saying before I pick up something that's in the chat box?
I've done that. Go on.
Okay, I wanted to pick up a comment that somebody wrote in the chat box about power. And it's a very, very appropriate, apt comment to make, and very important to make. And to me, this is crucially important to grasp and to understand from the perspective of people with dementia, and also from the perspective of the professionals who share the pathway with us. And it really is about sharing that power. And seldom do I see genuine sharing of that power, to be honest with you. Seldom do I see it. And it's risky and it's scary. And I know, as a former head of a large organization employing a lot of people, responsible for even more as a head teacher and as a local authority advisor, sharing power is challenging, no question about that. But it is immensely important, immensely rewarding, and immensely beneficial to all. When one understands, as I said earlier, about the communication, the honesty, the trust, the respect, the faith you have in each other, and the consistency that you seek to achieve, then it is very possible to share that power. But without that, distrust, suspicion, hurt, all of those things emerge and come to the surface. And if you're going to have a new beginning, it's no good just writing it on paper and saying, this is what we're going to do. You've actually got to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And you've got to see it in place consistently. And to be honest with you as well, where there isn't an absolute balance in sharing of the power, there needs to be an acceptance that the people with dementia need a bit more, perhaps, than the professionals need for it to work. Because of the disability, and that's the phrase that the Alzheimer's quite understandably use, the disability model for living with dementia. If that is accepted by us all, then we need to understand that the people with dementia need that extra tilting of the balance scales in order for it to balance fairly and for it to balance successfully. Yeah. So thank you for raising that point, whoever raised it, because I think it's really crucial.
I've always believed, and I still do, obviously, that if you get it right for dementia, you get it right for lots of other people as well. This is why I'm so keen that we get good hospital care, good public services, and accessible travel, to name but a few. And I think it's so important. Andy Woodhead, my colleague from Wales, is talking about co-production here. And it's exactly what you just spoke about, that negotiated shift of power, where we share ideas, share principles, and take it forward and take things forward. There's a question from Mary about signposting is the key. Do you think we do enough signposting? Does anybody have a go at this? She says, signposting is the key. I've been caring for my husband for 8 years, and I've never heard of you until a few months ago. And I am a real hound on the internet. Do you think we sometimes don't do signposting that well? Anybody like to go with that? Keith?
Yeah, I'm happy to start the ball rolling. Well, no, you go, Cheryl, first, and then I'll follow you. I've just been speaking.
Oh, thanks, Keith. I was just going to say, I do think that we've picked up when people are asking about understanding what the opportunities are to be involved, that there is an appetite there for understanding what else, what other services, support might there be, and that need to continually raise the profile of how people can be signposted in those communications. So that's definitely something that we're hearing and trying to respond to people, not to overload people, but to give them some, I suppose, repeated links to ourselves and other organisations when we are communicating about involvement. So I do think that is kind of an ongoing issue for people, to how to navigate what's available for me locally, what support and services can I access. So I do think that is something that we all need to be mindful of and thinking about when we are reaching out and communicating.
Yeah, just to add to what Cheryl said, I think, you know, there certainly does need to be more signposting, and we all can play a part in that and take some responsibility for that. You know, going back to the peer support notion that Mac raised and then others have added to, that's one way of doing it for certain. But also, I know through the Alzheimer's Society Dementia Together magazine, there's a lot of brilliant signposting in that. And it's kept very much up to date, and it really does do a great job, Danny, the editor of that journal, in signposting people to what's available. But of course, not everybody gets that magazine, but it is on the website as well and freely accessible, I believe. And it's a free magazine to purchase to get anyway. But there's never enough. But also, sometimes there's too much, you know, and sometimes people are overwhelmed by information. So it's a hard balance to achieve, but it's important that we continue to try and achieve that.
Joy?
Yeah, I think as well, there's a danger of thinking, oh, well, someone else will do it. Someone else will pass on the information.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, there's no way what to signpost as well. There's a great deal of talk around co-production. You know, what it is and how it works. And I've in Wales, I know for the fact that I won't deal with anything that isn't co-produced. You know, I just won't, because how do you know what you're doing is what people want if you don't ask them what they want, and if they're not involved in the planning. Do you think we plan enough? Do you think we use enough co-production as it is now across the three nations, the devolved nations, and the UK and England? I mean, I do know examples of stuff like, you know, we did that project with Sussex University, and that was absolutely co-produced from start to finish, and people got so much benefit from it that they've actually inspired the people who asked us to join in to extend the program. But do you think we co-produce enough?
Never enough, Nigel. But you know, it is relative, and I think somebody's just put in the chat box about Deep, and it's a point again well made. And Deep have done an immense amount of great work since 2012 when they came into existence, and of course we're mindful of how Deep will move into 2024 without the lottery funding that it's had for the last few years, and prior to that it had Comic Relief funding. So it's had some good backing in the past and done good work. And primarily, I guess, what Deep has done is support the network of groups nationally. But of course, if you're not a member of a group, Deep is probably less of a useful aid to you. Still does great stuff on its website and still does stuff that individuals can access, but its primary benefit, if you like, has been for those who are in groups. Whereas the Three Nations, when it was established by the group of us back in 2017, 2016, I think, was always designed to try and engage with individuals. And that's what we've always done. And there are people who aren't part of Deep groups who do benefit from the Three Nations, but also as people who are part of Deep groups who also benefit from the Three Nations.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, Keith, the fact that we've engaged with 111,000 people since April 2020, give or take the odd, you know, the odd through on the website, and even that we kind of wanted to improve on. You know, we're launching a patent soon, which everybody can have access to once we get the governance right for it.
I mean, that's sorry, Nigel, that's an immense number of people and it's something we are very proud of and very mindful of. But also alongside that, what people perhaps are less aware of, and it hasn't been mentioned so far today, the weekend socials have been mentioned. But what you're probably too modest to say, Nigel, is that when when Three Nations was established and went more virtual than face to face during lockdown, you instigated for members Christmas Day, Boxing Day Zooms and socials. Now that is immense to do, you know, for people to give up part of their Christmas Day and their Boxing Day for the benefit of other people living with dementia needs great applause, because there are days when people feel most vulnerable and most alone. And here we have the Three Nations doing that. Nobody else is doing that.
Yeah, yeah, but that's responding to a need, Keith. If you're going to do something and a need comes up and you don't respond to it, then you know. And I think they're so important that people have. Loneliness should be on the NHS. You know, it for older people and for people with dementia. Loneliness is so debilitating and bad for your mental health. I've been there, done it, got the t-shirt, and I know what it's like. You know, dementia isolates you anyway, and this is why I love peer support co-production, because it brings that isolation away from the dementia. And you can't be positive about yourself if you're feeling negative about what's happening around you. And to be on your own, you know, the services shut down over Christmas, and this, don't disrespect the services, they are having Christmas as well. But they you know, there's sometimes, you know, it's not an accident that the Samaritans are busiest at holiday times, you know, when there's nobody around, when there's nobody to talk to. And I do believe that what we've done in the Saturday and Sundays is unique. What we've done in the webinars is unique. I've not seen anything like it in Europe, to be honest with you. And I'm on the European Working Group, and I've not seen anything like it in Europe. And I think it's testament to the way we've been supported, everything else. Keith.
No, don't stop simply because my hand's gone up, Nigel. I want just to say something about new beginnings as well and looking forward. And I guess at the end we're going to talk about the next webinar. But before talking about the next webinar, still focusing on the Three Nations and what the Three Nations has achieved. When the Kitwood seminal book, Dementia Reconsidered, was republished in 2018, and this, for those professionals who are on the webinar today will know, is probably the most important book there is ever written about dementia. And it was written in 1997 by Tom Kitwood, who sadly died the following year. But his legacy is immense, and the book is part of that legacy. When Professor Dawn Brooker drew together a team of people to write updated commentaries on the book in 2018, the photographs that are included in the book, the new book, are of the Three Nations Dementia Working Group. It went global. It went global because people recognized the importance of the Three Nations Dementia Working Group, and that at that stage it was beginning. The Three Nations was beginning. And here we have the most important book ever written about dementia. And what do the editors choose to place within that book when it's updated, but the Three Nations Dementia Working Group, to illustrate that they're going forward? DEEP weren't in there, in a sense. Alzheimer's Society weren't in there, in a sense. AR UK weren't in there, in a sense. Dementia UK weren't in there, in a sense. What was in there was the Three Nations, and the reason they were placed in there is because of the people with dementia who were at the centre of that group.
Yeah.
To be at the centre and to be successful, we need professionals. And that's why it's great to have Cheryl on the panel today, because Cheryl's contribution to this webinar is every bit as important as that of Joy, Mac and myself and you, Nigel, because we are together presenting this webinar. And behind the scenes, we've got Amy doing what she needs to do to ensure this works. And that is crucially important as well.
Yeah.
And as Cheryl quite rightly said earlier, A lot of involvement stuff goes on in the society, which we're not aware of, because it's involving colleagues of Cheryl's and Amy's in it, making sure that people with dementia are more represented and better placed within the Alzheimer's Society. We don't always see that. We certainly don't always see it going on, but we hopefully will see the results of it when it happens. And that's the new beginning that we all look forward to as well.
Yeah, I do think that sometimes we don't understand the impact that we've had, and I guess because it's big numbers we're talking about. I mean, I keep on pinching myself and I get these numbers off James. I just have to, you know, you just look at them and you think, wow, how can this be? However, talking about new beginnings, I'd like to thank all the panelists for today's contributions. I'd like to thank all the participants. And I'm going to hand back to Keith for a minute now, who's going to talk about the next webinar. Is that okay, Keith?
Thank you, Nigel, for the opportunity. Yes. Somebody's already put in about the next webinar within the chat box. And our colleagues and friends at the Alzheimer's Society will be well placed to advertise and signpost and draw people's attention to the next webinar. But just to give you a nod on this, it will be on Tuesday, the 12th of March. And the subject for the webinar is one chosen by people with dementia. And it is about writing books and being part of books when they are written, co-producing books. And I know for a fact there are a large number of people with dementia who already do that. But there are many, many more people with dementia who have expressed to me and to others that they also would like to be part of a writing team and maybe tell their story in print as well. Because what formerly used to happen is a professional author or a professional from health and social care would come to people with dementia and want quotes for a book, or would want them to tell snippets of their story. And then the writer would take ownership of that and would express that as a professional writer or a professional from health and social care. That model still has a place. But what we are seeking to do, a number of us, is to place people with dementia at the typewriter, at the keyboard, at the pen and paper stage, so they can tell the stories authentically from their perspective. And at this webinar, I'll be seeking to get some publishers on the panel and some professionals who have worked with people with dementia and some supporters who have enabled people with dementia to tell their stories, so that hopefully it'll be a unique webinar, which I don't think has ever been done before. I'm certainly not aware of a webinar on this topic ever being done before. And it's not about one person or two people promoting a book at all. It's about promoting the idea that people with dementia can play a more central part in co-producing or co-creating a book which they then feel proud to be part of. That's what the webinar will seek to achieve next time.
Thank you, Keith. Amy, is it too late to put up the poll before we go? There we are. There's a poll that suggested, if you'd like to quickly do that before we go, we got 3 minutes left. We can't vote, only you can out there, participants. Thank you, Amy. And let me take this opportunity to thank everybody who's turned up today, and the panelists especially, for taking time out. We're bang on time, so I'm happy with that. So thank you all, and have a good day, have a good rest of the day. And we'll see you in a month's time. Bye-bye, everybody.